A lot has been going on in our country lately and around the world. There's so much to talk about. But I think now that we're a couple weeks removed from the bombing of Iran, that's kind of what I want to talk about first. Sometimes you notice I post videos a little late after the fact, but that's also because I like doing things in context a little bit more instead of just jumping into the hype of everything. And sometimes in the moment you're only getting partial news, partial facts, all that stuff. And then after a few days or a few weeks, then more of the story comes out, or more of the hypocrisy comes out, or more of the lies that the media pushes, or whatever it is. You have more time to kind of digest it all. But what Iran is another good example of is how our nation, from the average citizen all the way up into government, seem to have very little understanding of geopolitics. We don't bother to learn it. And both sides, the left and the right, make a lot of conjecture based on their very limited understanding of geopolitics. And the one thing about the Middle East is it's messed up. We all know that. But one of the things I've been seeing is how a lot of people are saying that we're just doing this for Israel, Trump's in the pocket of Israel, etc., etc., etc. And there is truth to that. But with that being said, we seem to forget we have other allies in the Middle East, other allies we would like to keep on our side in the Middle East. Jordan is one of them. I don't think enough Americans know that Jordan is very much a pro-Western and pro-American country. They are ruled by a king, which is kind of funny because their people love their king. We in America, we would despise the very idea of being ruled by a king. We're this democracy, this constitutional republic, all these other things people want to call it, and we think that we have some sort of say in it, but yet we hate our own government, we despise it, and yet they have a king, and the people there actually absolutely love their king because he cares about their country. And he's a real true Jordanian. He puts his country, his people first. And he's a soldier, he's a warrior. He will go out in front of the army in battle and stuff like that. He's a really interesting guy. You should look him up. But Jordan is very anti-Iranian. I was visiting Jordan. I've been to Jordan a couple times, and I've talked to the people of Jordan. They hate the Iranians. They don't let them into their country. They know that the Iranians are the main destabilizing force of that region more than any other thing. We have the Saudis, and despite our problems that we have with them, they're still a nation we want to keep on our side. And the Iranians are run by an extremist theocratic system. They're not going to get a nuke and use it as a deterrent. They're going to get a nuke and they're going to actually use it. And that's the difference. Even the Russians and the Chinese and the North Koreans, the likelihood of them using a nuke for the sake of using a nuclear weapon is very low. They'll use it as a deterrent, they'll use it as a threat, they'll use it as a last resort when they think everything's falling apart. But to use it just for the sake of using it, it's not likely to happen. Same thing with the US and Britain and Israel. But Iran, they're run by an extremely apocalyptic, doomsday, theocratic system. They're called Twelvers. And if you've never looked them up, I highly suggest you look them up. Twelvers are essentially waiting for the return of the 12th Imam, who they believe God has hidden in secret. And you get different variations of everything, but essentially it's that he will return when the world is in chaos and violence, and he will come and fight and restore Islam as the true religion across the world. So there's no doubt what Iran wants to do with the nukes. They have to be stopped, period. They have to be stopped. And with that being said, they were the destabilizing force of Iraq. That was the one area where Saddam was successful, was he kept the Iranians out of Iraq. He kept them back, and he kept the pro-Iranian groups in Iraq oppressed. Now, in America, we would not agree with what he was doing. He was very violent with the way he kept them oppressed. He was not a good dude at all. And this is one of the lack of understandings that our government had of geopolitics. When we ousted Saddam Hussein, we allowed these other groups to start having a say without realizing that they were going to push themselves closer to the Iranians and bring that Iranian influence in. And the truth is, in 2003, America was met as liberators in Iraq. The Iraqi people were happy to have us there. But the aftermath of the invasion and the ousting of Saddam Hussein was mishandled by the Bush administration and by Rumsfeld and all of them so badly that it disintegrated into what it became. Now, with that being said, despite what the media and other people would have you think, Iraq is a stabilizing country. It's trying to. It's not full of car bombs and stuff every day. I was in Iraq for work not too long ago, a year or two ago. I had been doing work in Iraq. And it was fascinating to me to see what they're doing. They're building infrastructure. They are trying to modernize. Most of the militias there, it's more of a political power thing. It's not so much jihad anymore and stuff like that. But they are teetering. They can go one way or the other. And because we as Americans have not accepted our victory there, we're allowing the Iraqis to cozy up to the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians, more so than they would have. So these are some of the geopolitical issues that we don't seem to understand. You can leave Israel aside on all this and understand that we have the Jordanians. They don't want Iranian power projected in the Middle East any more than Israel does. The Saudis don't want it any more than Israel does. Now, the Saudis have been trying to make peace with the Iranians, but I don't see it being anything real or legitimate. So we have other allies and other reasons to stay there because the Chinese and the Russians are going to be there as well. And the control of oil, whether we like it or not, is going to determine how things are going to unfold, over the next 10, 20, 30 years. As long as, technology is going to change, there's going to be a lot of things like that. But the Chinese, for example, they need to be able to come into places like Iran and Iraq and get their oil in order for them to continue to project military power. We don't necessarily need it, but if we can be there controlling that oil, it helps cut off those supplies. And that's a whole nother video about what's actually going on there with all that stuff. But we need to start understanding geopolitics more. And we need to start understanding that Israel is not the only ally we have in the Middle East. We have some very strong pro-American, pro-Western allies in the Middle East outside of Israel. Jordan being one of the main ones. And my experiences in Jordan are that the Jordanian people, I have, for the most part, really enjoy them. I love them. The ones that I have had experiences with are really good people. And they very much are not extremists there. A lot of Christian holy sites are there. A lot of Christians are there. Believe it or not, a lot of Orthodox Christians and Eastern Orthodox Christians and Eastern Catholics, etc. Actually, if you're a Christian and you want to go to the Holy Land and visit a lot of holy sites, Jordan has a lot of holy sites, including the supposed baptism of Jesus, or the spot where Jesus was baptized at. So we need to understand these things. We need to understand global power and global projection. Right now, as Americans, we are war weary and we are tired, and we have every right to be so. But that doesn't mean that we need to just give up and let everything be a loss. We shouldn't just give up on Iraq like we did Afghanistan. We sacrificed too much blood and too much money into that country to just give up on it. It's not Afghanistan at all. And I'm probably going to do another video detailing it much, much more. But I think this is why we need to understand we needed to bomb Iran. And this is an issue that we should have dealt with 10 or 15 years ago. But we keep kicking the can down the road, just like we do with everything, from our national debt to Social Security to the immigration problems to everything. We keep kicking the can down the road, and eventually another generation is going to have to pick up that can, and by the time they pick it up, it's going to be a disaster. When things could have been handled in a much more humane or diplomatic way, and another generation is not going to be able to do that. Or another generation ain't going to pick up that can, and then that can's going to explode, and it's going to kill a bunch of people. And that's what's going to happen with Iran. So, and the Iranian people themselves, they're tired of their own government. There have been massive protests over the last 10 years against their government, but they do not have the means to overthrow it. I'm not saying we need to put troops on the ground, but Western allies definitely need to find ways to arm and help those people. For those of you who don't remember, during the World Cup not too long ago, the Iranian people were out there publicly cheering. Hundreds of thousands of people, not a small minority, were cheering for the U.S. soccer team. They want their freedom. They want it, just like we do. But they don't have the means to do it. And so I'm not saying that we need to put troops on ground like we did in Iraq, but we need to find a way to help them change the regime so that they can at least have an opportunity. That's all they deserve, is an opportunity. All of us deserve an opportunity, and we'll either be successful with it or we'll fail at it. And right now, America's failing at our opportunities. But that doesn't mean the rest of the world shouldn't have their chance either. So that's just the video I want to do, a little longer than I wanted it to be, but I think we need to start actually learning the history, the tribal politics, the sectional politics of these regions before we get too involved. And that was one of the biggest failures of Iraq. It wasn't that we weren't wanted by the people at the time. It was that in the aftermath, those that came in to help the Iraqis rebuild did not understand the geopolitical situation. And because of that, instead of making the situation better, they made it far worse. Thanks. Share, like, subscribe, all the good stuff, guys. Thanks for listening.